so much attention. The Iowa Hawkeye women in the Final Four tomorrow, and we have got the best team in broadcasting who is in Cleveland right now. Let me show these pretty faces. Look at this. Jack Leto, Chelsea Brown, and Scott Zabel joining us. Guys, give us an idea of what today was like as we're heading into this all-important game tomorrow.
Well, we got to talk to both teams in the locker room. We also watched them practice today. They let us into practice for a whopping 10 minutes. So we saw a few shots. Caitlin looked good and was hitting some shots. And we saw them stretch a lot. It was fun to see Gino Auriemma. You guys had a chance to talk to Gino, correct?
I did, yeah. Gino Auriemma is a bit of one of those guys that, hey there, one of those guys that doesn't necessarily love doing all the talking that he's had to do the last few decades, but when you ask him a good question, he'll open up. And I just asked him, like, is it cool that everyone is catching up to UConn? Remember, UConn was the standard of women's basketball for such a long time. And he said, yes, it's great. This is what I've wanted. Everyone else had to catch up, and now they're here, and look at all this. If everyone else didn't catch up to UConn, we wouldn't have had this. And then he joked, I want to go back to the old days when UConn was dominating.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing, too, is that you mentioned that everyone's catching up now. Iowa now kind of has this expectation. You know, when this group first started out, getting to this stage was a dream. Now this is kind of the expectation. Gabby Marshall was really kind of hitting on that today. And just because that this team has been elevated so much, the talent is there, the recruiting is getting there, too.
Yeah, Jim, I get the sense that this is not too big this stage. It really helped that they made it to the Final Four last year.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, Chelsea, some video that you were able to capture a little bit earlier about Molly Davis. And you posted on X, formerly Twitter, that really a lot of people have seen, and it's really kind of heartbreaking. Can you tell us a little bit more about the scene that you captured and what you think it means?
We're talking about Molly Davis in the shot that you were able to get.
Right. I was actually just filming Coach Bluter at the time. She was walking over to me, and I just happened to catch that moment. I got some shots of Molly just hitting them deep from three, and she was looking good. She had a knee brace on there. Now, I do want to preface that Iowa had their practice after their media availability, so we don't know the status of Molly Davis. However, that interaction with Coach Bluter, from my viewpoint, it did not seem like a positive interaction and reaction from Molly Davis. So I'm not counting her out by any means, but at the same time, that interaction did not seem super positive.
Yeah, the difficult thing is when you come back for an injury, the game is so fast-paced right now. To be thrown right into a game situation when you haven't played for a while, and a game of this magnitude, it's really hard.
Yeah, and it just stinks for Davis. It doesn't necessarily matter that they keep winning, and Sydney Folter has done great in her absence. You just feel for the young woman in Davis who has worked so hard to get to this point, and you saw it on her face. Her emotions were it was just killer. As someone who loves sports, you just want to see athletes do what they can do to compete. And also, great reporting by Chelsea, absolutely doing her job, which is get the practice video. And we were at practice, and it was open to the media, and it's just unfortunate that we saw that side of Molly Davis. It made me kind of emotional.
Yeah, I do want to add, obviously, Molly being a senior and obviously a transfer into Iowa, she's been so appreciative of her time here, especially Coach Bluter, and this opportunity. So I know that if that were the case, that she would not play in this Final Four here in Cleveland, that would be tough.
Yeah, injuries are the worst part about sports, Jim.
Well, no, you're absolutely right about that. And let's talk a little bit. Jack, I do want to talk to you about UConn, but I do want to start, of course, with the Hawkeyes. I mean, they've been in these pressure situations so many times. I would think it's so important to be loose right now and to get your mind into the game in an appropriate way, not overstress yourself. What do you feel was the mood for Iowa today?
Oh, I thought they were in a great mood. They were having fun. They were dancing a little bit in warm-ups before they got going, and it looks like they're relaxed. And what the most important thing, I think they're very confident right now.
Is this Iowa?
Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can't hear Jim,
Yeah.
so we're not very sure. I think so too, and I think that it was kind of comical for us, who's been covering the team for a couple years now. At the same time, this specific team, when we were in the locker room, a lot of outside media was just asking like, "Are you ready for this circus?" It's been a circus for the Iowa women's basketball team for a while now. They've gotten so much media attention. So this, getting back to here, is nothing new to them.
Yeah, I was in Bloomington, Indiana, and saw a couple of elephants and a few clowns running through the game. No, I'm just kidding. Back to Scott's earlier point, which I found it's a very prescient point, is that they're loose, they're chill. They've been here before, and they're obviously taking this game seriously, but they're not so tight and you're like, oh, what is this? How do I do this? They know what they're doing, and they know how to balance the media obligations and the fun stuff and the gifts with getting down to business, watching the film, doing the work, and they're not changing anything about the way they practice or the way they interact. They're having a good time just like they have all year, and that's what we've heard from them all year. It's not just I want to win a basketball game, it's I want to play with my friends.
Yeah, and we're not allowed. I said we're allowed into practice just the first 10 minutes, but Coach Bluter has said this team is extremely locked in. Everything they do, they are locked in and focused, and I think you've seen that in the last couple of games.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you definitely feel team, T-E-A-M, capitalize that for Iowa. But, Jack, you spent a little time with UConn's coach, and we're really talking about legacy with them. But it's not like I mean, is it theirs to lose? Is it really that much of a UConn domination right now?
Jack, Jim is asking about UConn and their domination right now and what they've been able to do in the past.
Force of habit, Chelsea. I'm sorry. They've simply been incredible. I mentioned in the news at 6, 11 national championship game appearances since the year 2000. A lot of these Hawkeyes were born in 2000, 2001, so they've been alive for 7, 8, 9 of those, and they grew up loving UConn because of their dominance, and frankly the dominance continues today. Remember what I said before, everyone else has caught up to UConn. UConn hasn't gotten worse. Yeah, they're a little injured, but they have a couple of WNBA players in Aaliyah Edwards and of course Paige Beckerts. They are really, really talented. I think the only thing the Hawkeyes can exploit is their depth. Because of those injuries, UConn really only has 7, 8-ish usable players.
Yeah, that's a problem, but they said they're used to that now, so they're consciously trying to stay out of foul trouble, and they said they're in great shape. But I think that's a problem when you play a team like Iowa because they're so fast-paced, and if you're just playing 7 players, that is a problem. You could get in foul trouble, but I think towards the end of the game you lose your legs, and it's harder to make shots.
And I think even in that LSU game, you could see the Tigers were a little bit tired. Yeah. And I remember Kate Martin kind of just getting the group fired up, and she was saying, like, hey, let's keep running on them. Let's keep running on them. They're tired, so I do think that will play to the Hawkeyes' benefit.
Yeah, Iowa's pace is like no others. That's why they lead the nation in scoring.
Guys, I mean, are these two teams really pretty equal in stature? Because you're looking average points, 80 points for UConn, 92 for Iowa scored, and points allowed, 57 allowed by UConn, 71 allowed by Iowa. I mean, do those stats mean anything? Are these two real equal teams?
Yeah, I think they're very similar. And I think the style of play, they are very similar, but Iowa's just a little bit faster, and they have more depth. They can go to their bench, and I think that is the biggest difference. What do you guys think the biggest difference between this Iowa team and UConn team is?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. The biggest difference, well, you obviously have to start with the similarities with Paige Becker's and Caitlin Clark as the two dominant point guards. Probably the difference is kind of how they play offense. Even though they both like to run, UConn is a little more adept in the half court, and Iowa, on the other hand, they're more of a transition team. They don't necessarily want to get into half-court offense, set a couple screens, throw the ball this way, that way, get it down low. No, they want to rebound the ball, run. Caitlin Clark throws it ahead, Hannah Stolke puts it in. And speaking of Stolke, I think Stolke, Addison O'Grady, and Sharon Goodman and AJ Ediger as well, they make a big difference as far as the bigs go. If Stolke gets in foul trouble, one of those other three can come in, whereas Ice Brady for UConn and Aaliyah Edwards for UConn are really their only two bigs. Both of them are extremely talented, but if either of them gets into foul trouble, that provides a little bit of trouble for the Huskies.
I think the Hawkeyes are just tough. I think of Sydney Falter. I think of Gabby Marshall, who's going to be on Paige Beckers. That's going to be a very fun matchup to watch just because Gabby does so much on the defensive end. She may not get her points, but at the same time, she does so much, and that I think is so under the radar to a lot of fans, just what she does on the court. But I think rebounding, obviously, always going to be huge. And if Iowa can hit like they were hitting outside on the perimeter, like they were against LSU,
they're national champions.
Keep it rolling, keep it rolling.
Yeah, one thing about UConn, and Caitlin touched on this today, they are very fundamentally sound. Mm-hmm. So Iowa will have to beat them. UConn will not beat themselves, and I think that's important. And Caitlin knows how they're going to play her because they've played a couple times. She says they're going to get up in her, they're going to pick her up full court and make her really work. So that'll be interesting to see. But once again, that comes to depth and how tired, if you cover someone like that they will get.
And don't you think that Caitlin's going to be fired up and this team's going to be fired up just because of what happened last time against UConn in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, and interesting, we talked about Caitlin. You know, she grew up a UConn fan and wanted to play for UConn when she was little, did not get a scholarship offer. She says that maybe was blown out a little bit out of a proportion because, as you said, Jack, everyone wanted to play for UConn back then.
So not everyone can get a scholarship offer from UConn. And I really credit Caitlin for coming to Iowa. It's not as if she came to Iowa over UConn, but she came to Iowa over a powerful program like Notre Dame, who had just won a national championship. And I think not just Caitlin, but players like Caitlin going to different schools than the traditional powers like South Carolina and Tennessee and UConn and Notre Dame, they have really increased the parity in women's basketball. There's nothing wrong with obviously going to one of those earlier schools, those Blue Bloods I mentioned, but man, it is so cool to be able to see all these different teams making their first or second Final Four and competing with the so-called Blue Bloods. I think you have two great examples. You got NC State and Iowa on one side, and UConn and South Carolina on the other. South Carolina and UConn have combined for 13 national championships over the last 20 years. NC State and Iowa haven't won any.
Yeah, it makes it a better game.
I'm a little partial too, but at the same time, I think that's what's been fun to watch about the women's tournament this year is all the superstars. They're sprinkled out all over the country, whereas the men's, they still have their Blue Bloods, they still have their powerhouse programs. So I think the women have just been really fun to watch over the past few years.
Yeah, that's why the women's game is so popular now, Jim.
So the other thing, of course, is let's talk about Caitlin Clark. She got AP Player of the Year, 35 of 36 votes. Do we have to track down that one voter who voted nay?
Yeah, I think we should. Is there a way to do that?
And I know, the one vote for the Stanford player, of course. I guess you don't want it always unanimous, but I mean, it's just pretty amazing, and it just underlines the dominance of Caitlin Clark for this sport.
Yeah, I was in the Caitlin Clark interview today, and she said when she was a little girl, she dreamed about a lot of things, but she never dreamed about anything like this. It's something that she's done that you cannot dream about. Nobody would expect to do everything that she has done. She is so blessed that this has happened to her. She thanks her teammates. But once again, she didn't dream of this as a little girl. Dream of everything that's happened, all the records, on the Final
the awards.
Fours. Yeah, everything that's happened to her. Even in her wildest dreams, she could never dream like that.
I think the best thing, though, is to hear how appreciative she is of it and just how humble and how grounded she still is, even though, I mean, she gets so much attention everywhere she goes. But I think that's what makes her so, so, so special. And Jan Jensen has said it once or twice before that she's the same 7th grader that they recruited to the woman that she is now. And I think that speaks volumes to her.
Yeah, I will never forget what Jan Jensen told me once. It was that Caitlin Clark on the court is a killer. She wants to prove that she is the greatest player in the world, the best that's ever been. But off the court, She doesn't care. A ball that said I have more points than anyone in NCAA history. That's cool. I'd rather just hang out with my teammates and my coaches. And I think another thing that I think is going to happen in the future, and I certainly hope will happen in the future, we as media and folks who are huge Caitlin Clark fans, Iowa fans or otherwise, they're not just going to remember all the trophies that Caitlin won or the games that Clark won. It's just going to be the impact she has, the autographs that she signed, the pictures that she took, and the people that she turned from casual basketball fans into diehard women's basketball fans.
I think something that Don Staley, too, that stuck out to me at the AP press conference, too, was that the legacy that Caitlin is going to leave is the viewership. And she kind of joked, too, that not only with Iowans, but they finally showed up after her freshman year. We all know that Caitlin started during COVID, so there was no fans at that time, but that will be her legacy.
Yeah, coming up tomorrow, I'll kind of get inside the mind of Caitlin Clark and how she is wired differently than most athletes.
Well, I got to tell you the truth. I mean, I just love when you, every time you talk to her, the poise that she has, the way she answers questions, the way she, you say talk to the fans, but also the way she talks to the media. She's like the complete package, both as an athlete and as a person. Hey, I just want to throw out one more stat to you. I don't know if you guys saw this, that the cost of tickets for the women's Final Four is basically double than what the men's are. Average price for women, $2,300. Average price for men, $1,000. Oh my, how times have changed.
Yeah, times have changed, and Caitlin addressed that a little bit today, too. The men often play in football stadiums and bigger arenas, that maybe now it's time for the women to do the same, especially when you're paying that much for a ticket. It's tough for her to find tickets for a lot of her friends that want to come to the game.
Do we think, I mean, let's just pose the question. Do we think there are things that have to change with the NCAA women's basketball tournament? Because here, we're not really opinionists, we're reporters, but in my very humble opinion, this sport is growing super, super fast, and the NCAA is just not quite keeping up. Is there something that has to change with the tournament itself?
I agree. And the perfect example, me and Chelsea were in Albany, and that no way was that facility ready to cover something this big. And that's a problem. And maybe they don't need to go to football stadiums, but there's a lot of things that they're going to have to keep their eye on because the game is growing so fast.
And something that Don Staley said is that it's, and Caitlin has also kind of echoed too, is that the game is in a great place and it's in a great place moving forward, but at the same time, it's trying to catch up. It's a little bit of catch up right now. I think the arena here in Cleveland, the staff so far in Cleveland have been phenomenal and fantastic, way different than compared to Albany, but at the same time, like, let's get a couple thousand, fans in here and then see how this place operates. But I think when they say that this game is in a good place right now, that means that it's only going to get bigger.
Exactly. And Scott, if I could just say something, we're kind of fangirling over this sport we love, and broader than just Iowa, this game is in a great place and it's only going to continue to grow. I think Iowa fans know this. There's never going to be another Caitlin Clark, but Iowa fans are going to keep tuning in because there's no Caitlin Clark, but there's Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame, and there's Juju Watkins at USC, and there are Michaela Williams at LSU, and there are so many fantastic players who could be the next Caitlin Clark while still maintaining their individual selves.
And there's Bluter's Bunch, who's been around for a lot of years.
And just the recruiting class that Coach Bluter is bringing in the next few years, there might be someone like Caitlin Clark in there we don't know yet.
Well, she's certainly instilling in young people the dream to become another Caitlin Clark. Hey, tip-off is more than 24 hours away. What do we expect in those hours ahead? And tell me a little bit about our coverage.
Well, we're going to have a full day tomorrow. Obviously, we're on the noon show, the 4, the 5, and the 6, leading up to tip-off. So we'll have all kinds of stories tomorrow. As I said, I have that story on Caitlin and getting inside of her mind and how she is wired differently. We'll also have all kinds of preview stories tomorrow.
Right, and I'm also going to touch on, too, Kylie Feuerbach, who has a different perspective this Final Four. She missed all of last season just because of injury. She was out the entire season. So it was fun chatting with her and seeing her viewpoint and the fact that she's been able to contribute this season, which has been nice.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to show you what Jan Jensen had to say about all the people that were shoved into her locker room. She was asked about it, and she said, you know what, this circus, I'm okay with it. Like
She's eating it up. She loves it.
She loves it. And Jan Jensen is a person just like Lisa Bluter, just like Gino Auriemma, just like Dawn Staley, who have been in this game loving it the same way they've loved it for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And now they're getting to see everyone else love it just as much as they do.
It's nice to see the appreciation grow.
Yeah. All right. That's what we got coming up. Make sure you watch us all day tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for this quick look at what is going on as far as the Final Four. Women's basketball, once again, UConn and the Hawkeyes tomorrow night. I believe it's on ESPN. And, of course, we'll have full coverage at KCRG. So thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your night.